I just wanted to briefly talk to you today about the human genetics degree course in the School of Genetics and Microbiology. Before I do that, I want to remind you a little bit about genetics and the importance of genetics. We're made of 30 to 40 trillion cells, but in each cell we have 2 meters of DNA, which controls all of those cell functions from initial fertilization of an egg right through to the development of the embryo to a full human being, and then to an adult where you have 30 to 40 trillion cells with that controlling information in the nucleus of every cell. And so it's not surprising when we have that level of information in the cells, and that we understand the sequence of the human genome, that we can actually understand a lot of the functions of that genetic information. And also we understand what happens when there are mistakes or mutations in that genetic information. And that's the whole field of human genetics, really tracking on, what it is to be a human being, and also what can go wrong with our DNA code and how we might be able to amend that. How can we use genetic information to design powerful and potent novel therapies? And we're in a completely different era now in human genetics, because as of 2003, we got the first human genome sequence. It cost about $3 billion and many, many years of hundreds and thousands of people working on it. But now in 2020, you can get your human genome, the whole genome sequence, for about $500 per individual or per sample. And so that's more than a million-fold price drop in this time frame, so in 17 years. It's probably the greatest price drop of any technology. So technology is really changing. It's becoming streamlined. And it's changing what we can do in human genetics. There are many, many human genomes sequenced, and we're beginning to understand those subtle differences between you and me that will change our risk of disease and that change the course of our lives, in essence. And so we have entered the era of personal genomics, and that's what you're going to be learning about when you do human genetics. You'll be learning about the basic information that you need to understand personal genomics. And I put this slide here because it's of Angelina Jolie, the actress, who herself told people probably about a decade ago now that she had a breast cancer gene, and she highlighted the huge value of understanding genetic information to avoid disease and disease risk. I thought I'd also just highlight another story, which is the hemophilia story. Hemophilia is an X-linked disease. It's found on the X chromosome. It affects males. There are two forms, hemophilia A and B, that encoded by the genes factor 8 and factor 9 genes. And they encode these factors that are involved in clotting. It's a bleeding disorder. And it's a beautiful example of where genetic information has really changed things for patients with this disorder. First of all, initially it was the identification of the disease genes and the encoded proteins on the X chromosome, and that was using genetic techniques. Secondly, the era of making recombinant protein from those genes arrived, so factor 8 and factor 9 proteins, using again genetic techniques, DNA technology, to make those proteins. And there are lots of hemophiliac patients that are still being given these proteins to prevent bleeding, inappropriate bleeding. But now we are now in the era of gene therapy. And non-harmful viruses, in this case an adeno-associated virus or AAV, is being used to deliver these therapeutic genes, factor 8 and factor 9 genes, to the target cell population in the liver. And this is a once-off therapy. These therapies are really nearly near the marketplace. They're in phase 3 clinical trials. The data looks amazing. The patients who've had a once-off therapy have 30 to 60% levels of circulating factor 8 and factor 9, and they're preventing bleeding bouts. So that's a really exciting story, and that's the kind of thing that you'll learn about in human genetics. In my own area, I work in eye disease, inherited eye diseases, and in fact, the very first ocular gene therapy using AAV has been given approval by the FDA in 2017 and by the EMA in 2018 for an ocular gene therapy. That means it's been through phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trial, and now you can actually prescribe this for patients. And this is to treat a blinding disorder, a rare recessive blinding disorder. And the therapy is amazing. Kids who were not able to see effectively do not have perfect vision, but have very functional vision after a single injection subretinally into their eye. So it's these kind of technologies that you're going to understand when you do human genetics. And during the human genetics degree course in junior sophister year, you will do a lot of foundation modules. Some of them will be in medical genetics, so really focused in some of the areas that I just talked about and the technologies that drive medical genetics. Some will involve evolutionary and population genetics. You will get a foundation in diverse areas relating to human genetics. You'll also go on a retreat with all junior sophister students and faculty together. You have small group tutorials, and there's a huge opportunity for summer internships as well in international labs, exciting opportunities. There are also opportunities to look and do approved modules. So 40 units will be in the core modules and then 20 units in approved modules. And you can choose from either to do 2 Trinity electives or 1 Trinity elective, 1 per semester. And also you have these additional courses, approved modules that you can choose from in 3rd year. In the final year, one of the key things that is undertaken is a 10-week laboratory capstone project. And that will be with one of the leading teams, internationally leading research teams in the department. And you'll have active participation in exciting research studies that are ongoing in the genetics department. Additionally, you will do further work on core modules and to further extend your knowledge base in key areas. But the interesting thing here is that you have a wide choice of senior sophister courses in human genetics. And so there's a wide choice for you to choose from. And you can pursue areas that you're particularly interested in. So I'd just like to thank you for your attention, and we very much look forward to seeing you in human genetics. I started my career in human genetics many, many years ago. And each year I can genuinely say I actually find it more exciting, not less exciting. We're in an amazing era in human genetics. Thank you.